Thanks for joining us today for Grinds on a Dime, our online cooking series with affordable, easy recipes to feed your family. I'm Marielle Hampton, and my colleague cooking today is Hallie Cristobal. We're both extension agents with the University of Hawaii's College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, or CTAHR. As part of the Cooperative Extension Service, we provide science-based public outreach and education to support families, youth, older adults, and residents across the lifespan in Hawaii. Today, Haley's going to be cooking some chicken recipes. So she'll be making chicken burgers, white bean chicken chili, and Asian lettuce wraps. It's almost dinner time, so I don't know about you, but this is making me hungry. I'm ready to get started. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna go ahead and pin or spotlight Haley's two videos for you guys. So you should be able to see both an overhead view of her cooking and a front view of her chatting. And if you're on a mobile device, you may have to swipe to one side to see the other view. All right, thanks so much. Let's get going.
Hi, everybody. My name is Haley. I'm from Kauai County. If you came to our first workshop and our second workshop, you know who we are. But the first recipe we're going to be making today is a chicken burger. So what we're trying to do is give you an alternative to hamburger, anything like that, with a little bit more lean protein. So what I have in this bowl is just some ground chicken. And we're just gonna make a basic chicken burger. So what you could do with these things usually is you can make an actual burger. You can use it for things like hamburger steak, loco mocos, anything like that. And these are actually very freezer friendly. So you'd go ahead and you'd cook them, and then you could freeze them individually or put them in your fridge, and you can have meals for the whole week. And you can even break them down and put them into things like pasta or anything like that. So let's get started. So I have 1 pound of our chicken. I'm going to add in my half an onion and 2 cloves of garlic. To this, I'm also going to be adding in 1 egg. And if you are not good at cracking eggs, usually you would want to crack it into its separate bowl, just so that you can fish out the shells, if anything. So to this, we're also going to be adding about half a cup of breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to add that on top. All right. And then I'm going to be adding in some salt and pepper. And these are really cool. I don't know if you guys have seen these before, but these are electronic salt and pepper shakers. So what you do is you turn them and they light up and they grind salt and pepper. So if you're a little bit older, if you have kids, things like that, these are really cool. I got them as a gift. I always had fresh salt and pepper in my house, and my arm would be sore by the time I was done cranking it. So these are really easy. You just turn them upside down.
Hey, Haley, we got a question. Yeah. If you don't eat meat, what's a good substitute for the chicken in this recipe?
You could do tofu. If you also like fish, you could do tuna, things like that. But tofu is a really good substitution. You could also use potatoes, or you could use ulu, breadfruit, things like that. It would come together almost the same.
Ulu sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I've made ulu burgers before, and they are really good. Okay, so what we're going to do is just mix this all together. And there's 2 options. Well, actually, there's 3 options how you want to cook this. On the recipe, it'll tell you how to cook it on the stove. But I actually wanted to show you guys how you would cook it in the oven, because it's a lot less time consuming. You could actually just put it in your oven and continue with something else, like what we're doing tonight. You could also put this into the air fryer. So you'd make them into your patties and you'd put them in the air fryer for a few minutes and they would come out the same. All right, so we have that. I'm going to move this bowl on the side and grab my pan. Okay, so all you need to do is just take form a ball of some of your patty mixture. And I just want you to make a little ball, flatten it out, and it'll be a nice little patty. And you can just put that on your baking sheet. And you just want to continue to do these. And like I said, when you're done making these, they're super freezer friendly. You could, after you're done cooking them, you can put them in the freezer and you can have meals for a few weeks, or you can put them in the fridge. And maybe for lunch, you want to have a loco moco, or you want to have something like hamburger steak, or tonight you're making burgers and you don't want to, or you have too many and it's just like a family of 4 and you have 6 burgers. You can always have room for leftovers. And you can also use them to break them up and put them into some pasta or into some kind of a salad. One of my favorites in my household is to make what we call a Big Mac salad. So we use like our Thousand Island dressing. We'll make some burgers like this and we'll put it over a salad. And it kind of tastes like going to McDonald's, but a little healthier. So it's a nice, good tip. And they're just nice to have. That way you always have something that's ready and easy. It comes together super easy.
How do you freeze them when you put them in the freezer?
So what I do is I will individually seal them. So I'll put them in like little quart-sized baggies or sandwich-sized baggies. And then I will freeze them flat. And then I'll make sure I label them. Make sure you label the date. And then you would just take out one baggie or however many baggies you need for that time. And you can leave the rest in the freezer. But you want to make sure you're freezing them flat. That way they defrost evenly. And then they don't get like freezer burn. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and put it in a 350-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 15 to 20, depending on how hot your oven is. So I'm going to go ahead and put this into my oven. And then I will be right back to show you guys our next recipe. Do you guys have any questions in the meantime?
I was just wondering if you've ever made these with like beans or lentils or anything like that before. It seems like that might be an interesting option for a plant-based version.
Lentils?
Yeah.
I've made lentil burgers before. So in our other nutrition workshop when I partner with Foola, it's solely plant-based. So everything is vegan. So we've made burgers out of pretty much everything you can think of. And we've made tacos out of pretty much anything you can think of. And lentil burgers are really good. Black bean burgers are also really good. We've made burgers out of garbanzo beans. But there's a lot of options out there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven real quick. So how many of you eat hamburgers regularly? You guys can go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm actually not really a hamburger type of person. Even when I was growing up, I never really liked hamburger. I was more of like turkey or chicken, just because I'm not really a fan of oil. Like, you know, when you're making chili and there's kind of that oil on that skim of oil. I'm not really a fan of that. So I've kind of grown up not really having hamburger too much, but we eat a lot of chicken and we eat a lot of turkey. So our next recipe that we're going to be making is our white bean chicken chili. So for that recipe, we have our chicken. We have some corn, some white beans. You could use cannellini beans. You can use garbanzo beans. We've got some garlic, jalapeno, and onions in here. We've got our little can of diced green chilies. For our spices, we have some oregano and some cumin. And we've also got our better than bouillon, which is going to turn our better than bouillon into our chicken broth. So the first thing we want to do is just put a little bit of oil in the bottom of our pan. And just a fun fact, I learned that you could use a Dutch oven on an induction burner. I didn't know that before today. And it actually cooks extra fast. So if you know, like if you have an induction burner, you know that they cook super fast. But if you put a Dutch oven on it, it cooks even faster. So I'll try and go a little bit slow for you guys, but it tends to get really hot really fast. I'm gonna go ahead and add these items in. Oh yeah, I like hamburger and spaghetti and casseroles. I actually found this like Italian turkey sausage at Target. So Kauai just got their first Target, guys, everybody. So it's really exciting. But yeah, I found this turkey Italian sausage at Target, and I made like a pasta casserole out of it, and it was so good. Just gonna add in a little bit more oil. And if you don't want to use oil, you can always go ahead and use water. That's completely fine as well. And you want to make sure that you season all layers. So we're going to add in a little bit of salt and some pepper. Next to this, we're going to add our chicken. These are chicken thighs. You could go ahead and use chicken breast if you want, chicken tenderloins, anything you have, anything you like. If you're not really a dark meat kind of person, you can go ahead and go with chicken breast. If you like dark meat, you can go to chicken thighs. And make sure if you are using chicken tenderloins, though, that you are taking out that strip, that loin. So we're going to go ahead and add that in. And yes, we are putting it in raw. However, if you want to use this recipe with some leftover chicken that you have, maybe you bought some chicken from Costco, or you roasted a whole chicken, or if you just have some chicken laying around the house, you can go ahead and add that in as well.
I've actually made this recipe with canned chicken, which might not work for some people, but I thought it was great.
I actually never usually cook with canned chicken. But my mom had turned me on to cooking, making chicken salad out of canned chicken, and it's actually pretty good. I had no complaints.
Yeah, when you really have no energy or time to cook, it kind of works in a pinch.
So another, just a little tip, there's a step in the recipe. If you want to like have shredded chicken, you would go ahead and pull the chicken out after it simmers for about 10 to 15 minutes. However, if you're kind of on the lazier side, or you kind of like no stress cooking, you can just chop these and dice them like how I did. That way you don't have to pull them out. They'll kind of just shred apart as it cooks. All right, so to this, I'm gonna add my better than bouillon, or my chicken broth. And I actually like to use vegetable broth instead, but you could also use chicken broth, you could use beef broth, you could use pork broth, anything that you have. So better than bouillon comes in a paste, just like this, as we can see. So it comes in a paste, and what you would do is you'd add water to it, kind of like the bouillon cubes, but these have much more flavor.
Is that has to be refrigerated after it's opened, right?
Yes.
But it lasts a really long time in the fridge?
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but I have mine for at least like 4 to 5 months. But don't quote me on that. But yeah, I have it usually for a long time. Costco now sells it in the big jars for about $5 for like the really, really big jars. Whereas if you go to somewhere, you guys don't have Big Save, or maybe you guys have Times, but these would actually, so this small jar retails for like $7 when Costco sells the big bulk, the big cups for like $5.99. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and turn up our stove and put our lid on. And we can answer some questions if anybody has some questions while we wait.
I'll just add, I looked it up really quick, and apparently it has about the Better Than Bouillon has about an 18-month shelf life from the time it's open. So
wow,
you're all
okay.
good.
I'm good. Okay, I usually use it before 18 months. I use the whole jar, but that's interesting. But I'm glad you looked that up, so I don't feel like I'm breaking any food safety rules here.
And if you ever shop online, they have all sorts of different flavors. They have like a mushroom one, and I've bought, they have a clam one too.
A clam, oh, for like clam chowder or things like that. That'd be really good.
I've used it in like a seafood chowder. It was good.
All right, mine is slowly coming to a boil. While it's coming to a boil, I'm gonna add in a few things. I'm gonna add in my oregano. So 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. Sorry, it looks like a lot, but it's actually because this jar doesn't really open that well. And then I'm going to be adding in about 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. And I usually add just a little bit more because I really like cumin, but if you don't, then you can just add in a 1 teaspoon. But usually by the time I'm done, but again, I like cumin, I usually add in about a tablespoon. Ooh, somebody said that somewhere has a lot of varieties. And the good thing about this meal is that the chicken will cook up really fast in this broth. So this meal can come together within at least, 15, 20 minutes or so, especially if you're using an induction burner. But the good thing about this, and if you're using a Dutch oven, is that when this is done, you could always, put it in the oven to keep it warm, or you can leave it on the stove and keep it warm. That's the good thing I like about Dutch ovens.
We have a question.
Sure.
What fish is sturdy enough for this dish?
Marielle, maybe you would know. Sorry guys, I honestly don't eat seafood. Like I really don't eat seafood. I cook seafood, but I don't eat it. So that kind of question, I'm not really too sure, but maybe Marielle would know.
I am definitely not a pro with the fish. I was vegan and vegetarian for many years, and meat is still not my strong suit, but I'll go do a little research and see. My instinct is like halibut, maybe.
Oh yeah, maybe. It's more of a sturdier fish. All right, so this is kind of what it should be looking like. And because I cut my chicken into small dices, it's actually cooking through really, really quickly. But if yours hasn't, don't worry about it. Just give it some time. To this, we also want to add in our can of green chilies. And stir that. And again, you want to make sure that you're layering you're seasoning all your layers. So I'm just going to add in a little more salt. And when I say layer or season your layers, I'm not saying like put all of the salt that you need in at one time and then keep adding more and more salt. You want to just put a little bit of salt at each layer. That way you're seasoning every single part of it. So usually every time I add in something big that's new, like the chicken, or I did the vegetables in the beginning, that's when I would add in my seasonings. All right, to this, you can kind of see it now. Sorry, it might be smoking up my camera, but I'm going to go ahead and add in my beans. So I just have some white navy beans. So I'm going to add that in, just the whole can. And I did drain it. If you did not want to use chicken broth, you could just go ahead and leave the juice. And then I'm also going to add in a can of corn. You could use frozen corn, fresh corn if you have that at home. Leftover corn is really good too. I'm going to add that in. We're going to stir this. And we're just going to let that cover and cook for about 2 to 3 minutes. In the meantime, you want to get your garnishes. So I have some sour cream that I usually add to the pot, and then I will give people a little bit more if they want. And then I have some cilantro right here. How many of you guys like cilantro? You can put it in the chat. It's a genetic thing. You either love it or you hate it. I have a friend that loves it, and I have a friend that absolutely hates it and thinks it tastes like soap. And that's actually a genetic disorder. So you guys can go ahead and put it in the chat. Do you love cilantro or do you hate cilantro? Ooh, small doses. Okay. Some people love it. Ooh, love it. I actually grew up not really liking it, but I don't think it was because I didn't like the flavor. It just wasn't really introduced to me when I was younger. But now that I'm older, I kind of eat it in everything. All right, so this is what it should be looking like. Looks pretty good.
One thing I'd like to try is culantro. I keep hearing about it, but never tried it.
I grow culantro. I have it in my garden.
Is it easy to grow?
It's really easy to grow, but you have to grow it in the shade. Or at least I live on the hot side of the island where it's like almost 100 degrees all the time. So I have to grow it in the shade. But it thrives really well. It's easy to grow. It's easier than cilantro to grow. I never have good luck with cilantro, like ever. But
yeah,
I do
it's kind of, it's so short-lived. It's like, it's really hard to grow recreationally. Oh, so someone's asking what culantro tastes like. It's Vietnamese, right? Is that right? Or is it?
I believe so. I'm not too sure how to really explain what it tastes like. To me, what it tastes like is if you eat ganduri rice. Do you guys have that on the Big Island? Like patele and ganduri rice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me is kind of how it tastes. Like it kind of tastes like that whole dish combined. All right. So our chili is almost done. So at this stage, if you use the whole chicken or you just put a whole chicken breast in there, this would be the stage that you would take it out and you would shred it up. But mine is cooked perfectly through, and I've turned off my stove, and I'm going to go ahead and add in my half a cup of sour cream. And it'll kind of just give that nice, creamy, soft flavor of like having it creamy, but not milky. I don't know if that makes sense to a lot of people, but that's kind of how I picture it. All right. Is it used like cilantro? I've never used it like cilantro. But like I say, I use it in like when I make ganduri rice. So I have, that's actually the only way that I've ever used it. Because I like to eat that so often that usually I'm using it more than I have anyway. And yes, you can sub your yogurt for sour cream.
And I just looked it up. Culantro is native to the Americas.
Oh, interesting.
So continental, tropical America, and the West Indies.
All right, so this is our soup. I am actually gonna plate it out later, but this is what it'll look like, and I'll zoom in for you guys and I'll stir it for you guys so you guys can see all the different layers. So we've got some chicken in there. We've got some jalapenos, some onions, some corn. We've got our beans in there. And it's one of those dishes, if you let it sit longer, it'll get better with time. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and put this on my stove just so that it can cook through. So yes, the chili, it depends on how you like it. If you like it liquidy, like I kind of like my soup liquidy because my chili, I actually eat it with rice instead of tortilla chips like you're supposed to. You could use less chicken broth. If you like it soupier, use more chicken broth. But it just really depends on how you like it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the side real quick. You guys have any other questions for right now? I'm gonna go ahead and set up for our next recipe. And you can put them in the chat and Mario can read those out to me.
I'm really excited for this recipe. Lettuce cups are so underrated. So for the chili, you could use beef broth, you said, instead of chicken broth, right?
Yes, you could use pretty much any kind of broth. You could just, if you don't have broth, you could also just use water. Like I said, you could also just leave the juice from the beans of the can of the beans, and that would work as well. And if you are cooking your burgers in the oven, make sure you go ahead and you check that. All right, so for this recipe, I have my ground chicken. Let me just turn this real quick. I have 1.5 pounds of my ground chicken. You could use turkey, like I said. You could use hamburger if you really want to. And then in my bowl, you can hardly see it because I have all my veggies in here. But I have my zucchini on the bottom. I have some garlic, some ginger, my carrots, and my onions. I also have my lettuce. So I just picked this up at the store, but I usually have butter lettuce at home. This is kind of the equivalent. You could use romaine, you could use iceberg if you really want to. Just depends on what your preference is. I have some water chestnuts right here, and I just drained them. And then we are going to first off and start with making our sauce. So the sauce is the most important part. We're going to add in 2 tablespoons of sesame oil. Oh, Mario must be back.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so we're gonna add in 1/4 cup of our hoisin. And we're just gonna stir that all together. All right, we're going to leave that on the side. And we're gonna go ahead and start with our chicken or turkey, whatever you have. So I just added it to the pan and I'm just gonna break it up just a little bit. So how many of you guys are cooking with us tonight? Or you guys are watching? You guys can go ahead and put it in the chat.
At least one person cooking.
Ooh, thank you. All right, we're also just gonna add in a little bit of oil just to kind of get things going. Again, you can always add in water. You could just not add in anything, and that's completely fine. We're also gonna continue to season our layers. So I'm gonna add in a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper.
Three folks cooking, and they've got time to type in the chat.
Wow. All right, we're going to add in just a little bit of cayenne pepper, or actually pepper flakes. You do not need to add this in. If you like it a little spicy, you can add it in. But if you don't, once again, just like everything else, you can leave it out. So the good thing I like about turkey or chicken is that you necessarily don't really have to drain the oil because it's a lean protein. That means that it doesn't really create a lot of oil when you're cooking it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take out my chicken burgers, and I will be right back.
We have one person making the wraps tonight with vegan protein.
Interesting. All right, so this is what your chicken burgers should look like when they come out. I'll put this on the side. And again, you just want to continue to stir your chicken. And we don't want big clumps of chicken in this, so you kind of just want to keep breaking it up as you go along. All right, I'm gonna start adding in my veggies. So I have some carrots, some onions, and some zucchini, and I also have my garlic and my ginger in here. And you want to cook this down for a few minutes. I'd roughly say maybe between 5 to 7 minutes it'll take to cook down, especially your carrots. Root vegetables usually take longer to cook down. You guys have any questions right now, or am I going too fast, too slow?
We have a couple comments from folks making vegan versions of these dishes.
Oh, awesome.
Someone making the chili with soy curls instead of chicken, and vegan cheese and sour cream. Yeah, I never heard of soy curls.
You guys are so creative.
I'm interested to make this recipe because I think I've only ever done lettuce wraps with pork, but I think that the white meat would probably be a much healthier version.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually it would probably work with tofu. I saw a recipe where they kind of mashed up the tofu and tossed it with some oil and spices and then baked it in the oven.
Oh, wow.
Like in a single layer, and it makes it kind of a texture like, you know, browned, crumbled chicken. So I bet
wow, that's interesting. That would be cool. A tip for that is if you are gonna crumble your tofu, if you freeze it actually overnight and then you press it, so you freeze it overnight, and then you take it out and you press it as it defrosts, it actually loses a lot of its moisture, so it crumbles a lot better and it looks more like meat.
Cool. I never thought of freezing tofu.
yeah, so people do that for like tacos, because then whatever it is, like whatever sauce it's in, it'll absorb it that much more because the tofu is lacking the moisture that it came with.
What do you use to press your tofu?
But so when we're at our workshops, we use like books and we use like frying pans that have so sometimes our workshops are at a fitness center, right? So what are we around? We're around weights, or around fitness books. No, I have not used the water chestnuts yet. But yeah, so it's funny. So we'll put the tofu on a plate and we'll usually wrap it in a cloth so that it absorbs the liquid. And then we'll put like a frying pan or something on it. And then we'll put like weights that you lift in the pan to press the tofu. It's really funny. But if you are fancy, they do have tofu presses at Walmart and Target. So you just put the tofu in it and then you kind of crank and it'll slowly like press and press and press on your tofu. But you could definitely use anything. If at home, I'll use a cutting board. I'll put a cutting board on the top and a cutting board on the bottom. And then I'll fill up one of my pots or pans with water and I'll just press my tofu that way. All right, so at this step, we're gonna go ahead and add in our water chestnuts. And we wanna let this cook down maybe for another minute or so, because we wanna make sure those carrots kind of cook through just a little bit so we don't have any raw carrots. But if you like your carrots on the crunchy side, you can go ahead and leave them a little bit crunchy.
One person doesn't like water chestnuts.
That's totally
chestnuts.
fine. You can completely leave it out. It just helps with that crunch.
Yeah. Is there anything you would use instead? Like, I guess baby carrot or baby corn doesn't have the same crunch, but
I don't know. You know, I usually if people don't like things, especially like water chestnuts, I just tell them to leave it out because it's not like water chestnuts brings a flavor, right? It brings crunch mostly. So you could just leave it out and be completely fine. All right, so our combination is all nice and cooked down. I'm gonna go ahead once again and stir my mixture. And I'm gonna add that in. Oh yeah, walnuts might be a good substitution. I've never thought of that. All right, and this mixture, again, you need to cook it down because the sauce will actually thicken up. But if you're in a rush, you could always add a cornstarch slurry, or you could have cooked with a little bit of flour in the beginning. But it will definitely cook down with just some time. And while I'm waiting for this to cook down, I'm gonna go ahead and rip off a few things of lettuce.
Especially if you're on the Big Island or anywhere where there's rat lungworm, please make sure you are carefully washing and inspecting each leaf of the lettuce if it's
Yes,
local.
for sure.
But also you should be washing them regardless of where your lettuce comes from.
Yep.
It's Thanksgiving time and we know we're due for a big food safety outbreak like we have every year.
Is that how it usually is?
I don't know. It feels like it.
All right, so actually I'm gonna go ahead and go and wash these and then put them in my spinner, and I will be right back. Don't forget to stir your mixture. You can kind of see it's starting to kind of come together a little bit. The sauce is starting to thicken up a little bit more. So we're almost there. I'll be right back.
That's starting to look pretty good.
I need to get a bigger table. All right, we'll check this out.
Oh, adding
yeah,
jicama. Yeah, that's a smart idea. Or even,
thank you, Leola.
Wonder if yacon would work.
I've never had that before.
I feel like that's the most similar to jicama that I know of around here.
Oh yeah, heart of palm might work too. Thank you. All right, so mine is pretty much all come together. If you can see, my sauce is almost all the way through all my meat. It's getting thicker. So we're gonna go ahead and let it cool for just a few seconds and then we'll serve it up. But do you guys have any other questions? So for my turkey burgers, I am not making them into actual like cheeseburgers tonight. I was craving locomocos, so I'm gonna be making that after we're done with our workshop today. But I have those, and then I probably will use them for a meal prep for tomorrow, maybe making some pasta or turning them into hamburger steak or something like that. That's easy to go. Our chili is done. So just with our lettuce wraps. So what I'm going to do is just take one of my, I gotta find a pretty leaf. But I usually just kind of put a little bit in the middle. And then I usually roll it up just like that. Or like this, you guys can see right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and try it. If you guys are trying it with us, you can go ahead and try it as well. I always find it so weird to eat on camera. But it's super good.
Nice crunch of that lettuce.
Yeah, sorry if you guys can hear me chewing. I'm sure that's kind of weird. But it's so good.
Folks are loving the idea of locomocos.
You know, and it's just a healthier alternative because we want to talk about, we don't want to just talk about fast, and we don't want to just talk about, you know, like cheap and all those kinds of things. We want to talk about health, and we want to make sure, you know, that we're not just eating a bunch of oil and a bunch of saturated fats. And yes, all meat has saturated fat, but there is healthier options than pork and healthier options than ground beef. You know, if you want meat, you can have ground turkey, ground chicken, things like that. You know, and save those ground beef to have a good steak or something like that. You know, you want to make sure that you're kind of having a balanced meal, having balanced items in your food, so you're getting all your vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you really need, just at a healthier rate. Do you guys, that's pretty much it for tonight. Did you guys have any questions? I'm just gonna continue to eat my lettuce wrap.
Lavonda was wondering if it matters what size the carrots are cut, or could they be thinner?
You could use a spiralizer. You could grade them. It's completely up to you. If you guys have noticed, I kind of like my food a little bit heartier, a little more rustic, and it's easier for me to prep it. But yeah, it would just cook a lot faster. So what I would recommend is, if you're going to go that route, make sure, just like how these workshops are set up, you have all your ingredients laid out, everything's measured, everything's ready to go. That way, when things start to cook up really quickly, you can just add things in and then turn off your stove and everything will be done at the same time, because you just don't want to make sure you're kind of overcooking things.
That's a great tip. I think especially when you start working with vegetables more, you want to make sure you're not overcooking them.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on how you make your gravy for your loco moco?
So I actually use my Better Than Bouillon and I turn it into like chicken broth, and then I'll make a roux. So you guys learned about a roux at Mariel's last workshop. So that is equal parts fat to equal parts flour. So usually I'll use about a tablespoon of butter or oil or something like that to a tablespoon of flour. And I'll make that into a roux, thicken that up, and then I will add my Better Than Bouillon, vegetable, chicken, beef, pork, whatever kind of flavor. Mushroom would be really good. And then I just cook that down until it turns into a gravy. But that's just my nice, quick and easy gravy.
I love that. That sounds super easy. And now everybody has the skills they need to make gravy at home, because y'all learned how to make a roux.
Yeah, roux are super important. And once again, if you don't know how to make a roux, or you think that's kind of intimidating, a little bit scary, you could always make a cornstarch slurry and it will come out exactly the same. So a cornstarch slurry is equal parts water to equal parts cornstarch, and you'll mix it all together, and then it'll turn into a cornstarch slurry. And you have to make sure you add that into food that is boiling, because it won't activate the cornstarch unless your food is boiling.
Good tips. All right.
I'm just continuing to eat while you guys are talking.
Yeah. It's the best part. You just put in all this work. But 3 awesome recipes coming together in an hour, and they're all really affordable. I have to say, I've never actually cooked with ground chicken or turkey, but this is definitely making me want to give it a try.
Jolene, I just got your, but I will actually, I have a recipe written out, so I will just send that to Marielle and she can send that to you folks. I can probably get that to her either tomorrow or the following day.
Yeah, I'll send that out when I send you guys the recipes for next week and all that. So if you will be joining us next week, we're going to be making seafood recipes. So, I think it's a fun challenge to find seafood recipes that are quick and affordable, because we know, even though we're in an island in the middle of the ocean, sometimes fish and seafood can be expensive. So we hope to see you next week. Thanks so much for coming out today, and have a great night, you guys. Enjoy your food if you cooked with us.